Hi folks, I'm Peter Lemieux with Rounding Third from BadderSports. I tell baseball stories. I think I got a good one today. It's kind of good for me because in some weird way, I think I know this guy. Truth is, I don't. I never met the guy. I wouldn't know him if I met him. I'm not even sure. I don't even think he's alive anymore. But I know people like this guy. You see, like me, Barney grew up in a small town. A small town in New Jersey called Beverly, New Jersey. Went to a small high school. They played baseball against small high schools in the area. But Beverly is only 19 miles from Philadelphia. Now, Barney was a great athlete in a small town. We all know this guy. High school hero, okay? Everybody thought Barney was just going to go to work at the plant and be a good citizen of the town. Barney wanted to be a baseball player. So, getting out of high school in 1944, the war was winding down. Barney didn't have to go in the Army. Barney signed a contract with the Philadelphia Phillies right down the road. And he went to work, bringing a great high school fastball into the minor leagues. Worked hard and was determined. See, Barney wanted to do one thing with his life. He wanted to spend his whole life being involved in baseball in some way. Okay? So that's what Barney wanted to do. He started off pitching in the minor leagues. He had an okay first year. He showed some promise, but he knew he had a ways to go. I mean, he was just a year out of high school. The second year, he was pitching on what they described as a hot and humid night against a pretty good player who ended up being a good major leaguer. What he decided to do to get him out was to give a little bit extra into his fastball. So he kicked it into gear and threw as hard as he could, and all of a sudden, his arm hurt. Didn't know what it was, but he couldn't pitch anymore that night. Now, back then, we didn't have the medical people or the equipment or anything to even diagnose what Barney had. What they prescribed to Barney is massages and rest. Well, the rest lasted through the season because Barney could not throw a ball that even got to home plate. He went home, worked in a factory in the winter, and decided, I still want to be a baseball player. When he went back to spring training, it was obvious he was never going to be the pitcher he was because now he got his strength back, but he had nothing left on his fastball. He was very hittable. There was somebody around, I don't know who was, didn't say, who taught Barney how to throw a pitch called a knuckleball. I don't know if anybody in the major leagues throws a knuckleball today, but I'm told you just put your fingernails or knuckles on the ball and you throw it at a really pretty slow speed. And if you throw it effectively, the ball dances. You never know which way it's going to break. It's very hard to hit. Pete Rose once said it's an unhittable pitch. Very, very hard to catch. A lot of passed balls. And the reason nobody threw it very much is it's hard to throw it for a strike. So you end up hitting batters, you end up walking batters. But Barney was determined. And his only ticket to stay in baseball was to master the knuckleball, which he did in the minor leagues over several years. So Barney's life was minor leagues, riding buses to ball games, living on peanuts, going home in the winter, working in the factory, and then going back to spring training. But Barney didn't quit. He didn't quit. He kept pitching and pitching and pitching the knuckleball, where he got pretty effective. He was used as a reliever, but as we know in the 50s and into the early 60s, relievers weren't what they are today. Relievers were guys who weren't good enough to start. And they didn't use, quote, closers. So you would come in when the pitcher just didn't have it or was tired or something. And it was what we might call today mop-up duty. But Barney became pretty effective coming out of the bullpen in the minors, with ERAs hovering around 3.0 in the minors. That's excellent. And so periodically, starting in 1955, so Barney spent 9 years going to all these minor league cities like you can't believe, Utica, New York, and just little small cities, and just working on the knuckleball, working in the factory in the winters. But he didn't give up his dream. His dream was, I want to get to the majors. I want to make an impression on people. And maybe if I can do that, I'll get hired on as a coach so I can spend my life in baseball. He never stopped dreaming that. Finally, in 1955, the Cardinals brought him up as a reliever. And he spent the next 9 years as a reliever for someone. Nobody thought enough of him to give him a long-term contract. But in the middle of the year, Barney would get called up from a minor league team and he would pitch for a while in the majors. And he actually was pretty effective. Unnoticed, but effective. A reliever comes in and, in a 7-3 ball game and nobody pays much attention to what he does. His earned run average was often around 3. And didn't get saves because nobody got saves. But it kept him in baseball, which was his dream. Toward the end of his career in 1964, he landed on the St. Louis Cardinals. And through good fortune, that happened to be Barney's best year in the majors. He actually saved 14 games, which is a staggering number for that baseball that was played then. That Cardinal team made it to the World Series. Now, Barney's World Series was not very memorable. The only thing he was remembered for in the World Series is in Game 3, Barney gave up the game-winning homer to Mickey Mantle in the bottom of the 9th inning. That's what he did. But the Cardinals won the World Series. Barney got a ring. And the next year, when he decided he just couldn't pitch in the majors anymore, through a pretty much unrecognizable career by any standard, he was sent to the minors to be a pitching coach. His dream was coming true. Hardworking, dedicated. Eventually, Barney got called up to different major league teams as assistant coaches and was well respected. Barney Schultz's dream came true. He was in baseball his whole life. Pitching, and then assistant manager, pitching coach, whatever it was. He could stay around the game. All he ever wanted to do was be in the part of this game. Barney couldn't have accomplished that if he didn't master this silly pitch called the knuckleball. So I looked around. As far as I can tell today, I don't think there's a single pitcher in the majors who throws a knuckleball. Maybe as a change-up pitch or something. But Barney only had the knuckleball. I looked up who are the most famous knuckleball pitchers. There's not many, but I found some to bring to your attention. There's a guy way back in the early 1900s named Eddie Cicotti. Eddie Cicotti really was working on Hall of Fame numbers. In 14 years, Eddie won over 200 games with the Chicago White Sox. Unfortunately for Eddie, he got caught taking a bribe in the 1919 World Series and was expelled from baseball. So we don't talk about Eddie. As we go into more modern terms, very few knuckleball pitchers were able to be starters. Most of them, like Barney, just came in to help out in relief. But when looking up the most effective, I found a few to bring to your attention. One is a guy who pitched for the Astros named Joe Niekro. Joe was a starter and pitched till he was almost 50 years old because there's no strain on the arm throwing this pitch. Joe Niekro retired with over 200 wins. That's pretty good. Pitched a long time and he was a starter. Another guy with similar statistics who was a starter for the Rangers and the Dodgers was a guy named Charlie Hough. Did some relieving, but primarily a starter. So when Charlie retired, like Joe Niekro, he had accomplished over 200 wins. So they certainly are in the top level of knuckleball pitchers. Another guy who didn't have the career but had a great year that I want to remind you of was a guy who had a sensational year for the Mets called R.A. Dickey. R.A. Dickey won 21 games and was pitcher of the year throwing a knuckleball pitch. He was so good that he went into free agency and got a lot of money from the Toronto Blue Jays where he was not as effective. But that pitcher of the year, call it Cy Young Award, right? That's pretty notable for a guy just a knuckleball pitcher. But we now get to the best two knuckleball pitchers. I'm going to tell you who I pick as second, but mostly everyone else picks as first. And his name was Phil Niekro. Yep, Joe Niekro's brother. He pitched for the Braves. He was a starter and main ace of the Braves for many years. Like Joe, he almost pitched till 50 years old. These guys just kept going and going and going. So by the time Phil Niekro retired, he had established over 300 wins. Whoa, that's a lot of wins for a junk ball pitcher. If you add Joe's wins and Phil's wins, I get mixed up sometimes. The Niekro brothers, they have more wins than Cy Young. Over 500 wins between the two of them. And most people think Phil Niekro is the greatest knuckleball pitcher of all times. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to focus on a guy named Hoyt Wilhelm. Hoyt Wilhelm pitched from 1952 to 1972, 20 years. He did not get into the majors till he was 29 years old. So he was almost 50 when he retired. Different than the Niekros, Hoyt Wilhelm was used primarily as a reliever. At a time when relievers, like I said, weren't closers and stuff like that, he accomplished amazing things. Okay, just want to tell you this. When he retired, Hoyt Wilhelm became the first pitcher to pitch in 1,000 games. He was the first one to get 200 saves. He was an 8-time All-Star. He won 2 ERA titles. 1954, he was on the World Series winning Giants. And in 1958, he pitched a no-hitter when they let him start against the Yankees. Now, here's the reasons I like Hoyt Wilhelm. The whole picture of Hoyt Wilhelm is awesome. As a reliever, 143 wins, 228 saves in an era where pitchers didn't get saves for the most part, and a lifetime earned run average of 252. So my nomination for best knuckleballer is Hoyt Wilhelm. So just want to close by reminding you about this silly pitch. When properly thrown, it's really hard to hit. Pete Rose once called it an unhittable pitch because you never know where it's breaking. And it's really hard to catch. Catchers have a ton of passed balls, balls hitting them in the arms and everything because they don't know where it's going. They developed a catcher's glove for knuckleballers that was gigantic just to help the catchers out. So what makes these guys so good is they were able to take this crazy pitch and throw it consistently for strikes, somehow. Our quote machine of baseball, Bob Uecker, said this about the knuckleball because he was a catcher. He said, the best way to catch a knuckleball, just to let it roll and pick it up when it stops rolling. So this is a tribute to the knuckleball, to some great knuckleball pitchers, but mostly it's a tribute to a man with great perseverance. Barney Schultz had everything going against him. His dream was not going to happen. He was going to end up in a factory, but he wouldn't allow it. He learned to control a pitch nobody else could control. And he took that pitch to survive in baseball, minors, a few years in the majors, establishing relationships, and then getting coaching positions. So that at the end of it all, Barney Schultz did hit his dream. He spent his life in baseball, and he did it because of the knuckleball. That's my story. Hope you enjoyed it. Folks, like, subscribe, join our club. Put in the comments what you think about the knuckleball. Hoyt Wilhelm, Joe Niekro, Phil Niekro, and Barney Schultz. See you next time, folks.